Good evening, and welcome to another edition of CameraMusic, a special series of live webcast concerts produced by the Chamber Music Society of Detroit in partnership with presenters all over the country. Tonight, our co-presenters are the Chamber Music Society of Palm Beach and the Coleman Chamber Music Association, with supporting presenters Monterey Bay Chamber Music and the Tuesday Musical Association of Akron, Ohio. It is an incredible privilege for all of us to collaborate together to bring you this concert by QuaranTrio, a wonderful ensemble comprised of members of string quartets you've heard of, and we are about to have a quick pre-concert talk with them as we get ready for tonight's concert. I'm going to apologize in advance that you're going to hear a little bit of an echo of my voice while they're speaking, and even sometimes while I'm speaking. We are actually connected by cell phone. That's the only way that we could combine my live feed from a webcam here in Metro Detroit, Michigan, and their RTMP feed from their home in Philadelphia. This is all occurring in real time, and so it's a tricky thing. And so with that caveat, we will get on with the pre-concert talk. Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to another concert from CameraMusic, a production of the Chamber Music Society of Detroit. I'm Steve Wagaman, the president of the Chamber Music Society, and we are joined tonight by co-presenters, the Chamber Music Society of Palm Beach, the Coleman Chamber Music Association, and supporting presenters, the Chamber Music Monterey Bay and Tuesday Musical of Akron, Ohio. It is an incredible thrill for all of us to collaborate together to present a concert by QuaranTrio, an ensemble that did not exist until the COVID-19 crisis, and it happens that the members are sequestered together in the same house in Philadelphia. Tonight we're going to hear music by DOHNÁNYI, Chris ROGERSON, and Ludwig van Beethoven. And here to talk with us about the music they'll play and about what it's like to be quarantined together are the members of QuaranTrio, Brook, Brendan, and Milena. Here we go. You're on the air. Hi.
Hi! So glad to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you guys here. And in the interest of full disclosure, this is a pre-concert talk that we are actually recording on Monday night because at the time of the pre-concert talk, we're going to be scrambling to make sure the RTMP feed and everything else works about the broadcast. Now, you've done some webcasting from there before for other organizations, yes?
That's right. Yeah, we recently did a similar formatted concert for an organization called Group Muse, which usually, in the style of maybe the most analogous company would be Uber. They bring concerts to people's living rooms in a somewhat informal way, and we did what was called a Massive Muse, which is a ticketed event. And we were lucky enough to get 1,000+ ears and eyes for that particular concert. So this is not new hat for us, that's for sure.
Well, that's fantastic. Before we start talking about how we actually make this work, because the concert will be live, before we talk about that, you guys are related, right?
Yes, we are. Actually, no rules of social distancing or quarantine have been broken. Brooke and I are married, and this is our house, and this is my brother-in-law, Brooke's brother, Brendan.
Very nice. And how did you happen to be quarantined together?
Well, I remember Brendan and I, actually all of us, we were finishing up a concert in Florida, and the crisis was sort of starting to unfold rather rapidly here in America. So on our way home, Milena and I to Philadelphia, Brendan to New York, we were sort of corresponding with each other as to when maybe, if it continued to get bad, that we would sort of join in together. And shortly after we returned to Philadelphia, this is maybe March 13th or something like that, we called Brendan, who was in New York, and we said, you better get down here as quickly as you can. So he's been here in the house for the last month, and pretty much like everybody, especially after in the beginning when nobody really knew what was going on, we entertained ourselves by just playing string trios every night.
We're lucky we have a full formation right here in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of music written for this combination. Brendan, how is it to be trapped with them?
I plead the fifth. No, I'm kidding. It's been. I can't imagine a better situation in which to ride this crisis out. As Brook mentioned, we get to play music every night when we feel like it, and being a trio makes us, funny enough, a bit of a hot commodity, and so it's been fun to do all this streaming, and they have a beautiful house here in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is a wonderful city to go on, safe walks, and a beautiful city to go on walks. So I feel lucky. I feel very, very lucky to be here, and especially with my family.
Yeah. Just make sure you add that part.
Yeah.
Nicely done. So we've streamed several concerts already, and rarely have we found an ensemble that is as well equipped to do this as you are. You have some beautiful microphones there. You've got a nice MacBook Pro. You've downloaded a software program called Open Broadcast Studio, and so it took all of 15 minutes to establish the technical connection with you, and well, we appreciate it, but how did you end up with all this stuff?
Yeah, well, it's a cute story, and it's a very loving story. When we first were quarantined, we sort of rather quickly started doing these live stream concerts for an organization that all three of us individually play for throughout the year, called the Manhattan Chamber Players. We're all members of this group, and that group started doing live stream concerts on weekends, twice a weekend. And after the first one, listening to the playback, we sort of knew that we needed better equipment. We were just streaming from an iPhone. So Milena's father, besides being one of the most sought-after cardiothoracic surgeons in the world, is also a bit of an audiophile. And he very generously, without really even telling us, sent us a care package of...
Which included the microphones and the software.
Yeah, quite a bit. Actually, Brendan can tell you a little bit more about exactly what he sent.
Oh, well, I won't bore anybody with details, but there was two really beautiful mics and audio interface, great cables and everything we needed to start up a streaming Studio 931, as we like to call it here.
And Brendan sat down and immediately became the expert in the household of at how to run it all.
Wow. So, on behalf of the Chamber Music Society of Detroit and Chamber Music Palm Beach and the Coleman Chamber Association and Monterey Bay and Tuesday Musical, thank you to your dad.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Mom. We won't forget Dominique.
Yes. Thanks, Dominique and Octavio.
Yeah.
It's weird to see your parents.
So tell us about the music you're playing tonight.
Yeah. Well, the first piece is the string trio by DOHNÁNYI, the Serenade. It's in 5 movements, and for string trios, it's sort of the most romantically popular trio in the repertoire. At this stage, DOHNÁNYI is sort of at the height of both his influence and his power. It's a wonderful piece that starts with a march and then goes on to a romance, and then a really devilishly tricky scherzando type third movement, theme and variations, and then a really excited last movement, which sort of sums up the whole piece and brings us back to the original theme. And I think, similar to when Dvorak, who often does that, or even Mendelssohn in his early string quartets, there's nothing quite like going on the journey of a whole piece and then at the very end, the composer, in a very compelling fashion, bringing back the original thematic material. There's a feeling sort of coming home. And in this instance, it's a rather triumphant.
Yeah, it's very festive and
return
really
home.
satisfying to play too.
The second trio is actually, it's a very personal piece, and especially to Milena and I. One of our dear friends, the great composer Chris Rogerson, who actually only lives about 5 blocks south of us here in Philadelphia. Chris wrote this piece, which you'll hear, originally as a string quartet, which was played by 4 of our best friends at our wedding in California in June of 18. And very early on in the quarantine, we reached out to Chris and asked him to rearrange it for string trio, both because we wanted some new music to play, but also we really wanted to hear it
again.
We had only heard it while we were standing at the altar, so I can't say that I both remembered the feeling and didn't remember anything. So it's such a beautiful piece. I think we all wish it was twice as long as it is. And
if you can see, maybe not in the frame right now, but when we perform, there's a little framed thing above the piano behind us, and that is the first page of the manuscript for this piece, Brilena.
Wow. And then the Beethoven.
Let's talk about the Beethoven.
Oh yeah, and then there's the Beethoven. Well, I guess to sort of sum up in general the string trio repertoire, you had Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, who all wrote significant music for string trio. If we're talking about the greats, Beethoven entirely in his early life. Mozart wrote his great Divertimento actually towards the end of his life. Beethoven was really coming into his own at this point. These are all Opus 9, which when you think of his early string quartets being Opus 18, he was still rather young. This one in particular, the C minor, Opus 9, number 3, it's actually not the third trio he wrote. I believe it's the 5th trio that he had written. There are 2 serenades that precede it. This is sort of a real coming out party for him. He's clearly identifying himself as a composer to be reckoned with, and he's, especially to string players, very much hinting at what's to come throughout his life and throughout his output. And I think you'll hear in this piece, especially in the slow movement, the second movement, similar qualities to that of his late string quartets. He already had that in him, and in this piece it starts to come out in a very obvious way.
Actually, I think it's absolutely chilling how the first 4 notes, the first 4-note motive of the first movement of this piece are so similar to the 4-note motive of Opus 131, just the key is a half step lower.
Yeah, not to mention C minor, I think, has big significance for Beethoven. Obviously, most famously, the 5th Symphony. And I think no other key brings out his Sturm und Drang
Quite like it.
Quite like C minor.
That's true. Yeah.
It's a great first example of his C minor output.
That piece is Beethoven through and through, and it's really cool to see that when it's that early of a piece.
And you have actually all of you relationships with the presenters that are joining us tonight. In fact, you'll probably not be tuned in, but Jane from Coleman told a very touching story about your dad coming out and joining the Escher Quartet for a performance of the Schubert Quintet. She was really wanted us to all hear that story. And so I guess I didn't know your dad was a cellist, but so tell us some of the tell us some of your experiences with the presenters that we're going to be hearing tonight. I apologize. There's a telephone going off in my in my studio here, but carry on.
I think that's early technical issues of quarantine interviewing for sure.
Lesson one: turn off the phone.
Actually, for those of you in the audience who don't know, both of Brook and Brendan's parents are fantastic musicians, chamber musicians, orchestral musicians. Connie, their mom, is a violinist and violist, and David, as you know, hearing that he played with the Escher Quartet, is a phenomenal cellist.
Actually, in my first season in the Escher Quartet, due to some prior engagements that I had, actually, Steve, this is when I met you. I was that first season. I had a Musicians from Marlborough tour that came through to Detroit, and that same evening that we played in Detroit, my quartet, the Escher Quartet, had a concert in Palm Desert, California. And since I could not make that date, my dad actually filled in. So that was his debut with the Escher Quartet, was actually filling in for me. And since then, in subsequent seasons, we have had the pleasure of doing some collaborations with him, most notably, of course, Schubert Quintet, which we've done at Coleman, which holds significance to us, especially to Brendan and I, as we grew up in Pasadena, California, and that's where our parents still reside. And Coleman is where we first heard our heroes, the Guarneri Quartet, and all the great artists that we grew up idolizing. Coleman was our hometown series, so to sort of come back to it as professionals and play the Schubert with our father, that was unforgettable.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I had no idea. That's wow. I can't think of the next question. I'm so moved by that.
Well, you should. I think Brook should maybe talk about our relationships to Tuesday Musical.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, this seems like as good a time as any, and I know that they'll be acknowledged throughout the night as they should be, but all of this came together very quickly. Typically the hiring process to the actual concert can take a year to 2 years. Mm-hmm. And this has all been happening in exactly 1 week to put this concert together, to have the idea from Steve and Detroit, and to find other organizations that would want to partner in this presentation. And I have to say that I think we're all just floored by the camaraderie between these organizations, stepping up together, working together in extremely quick fashion, while also, of course, remotely, to make this a reality. There were these 4 organizations besides Detroit are all very dear to us. Coleman.
Actually, the 3 of us were just with both of our quartets in Palm Beach, playing the octet concert there only a few months ago.
One of the final concerts before the
final concerts
began.
And Palm Beach, and especially the Escher Quartet, over the years have had a significant relationship. So to be able to reach out to Palm Beach and immediately connect with them and feel their enthusiasm, we just couldn't believe it. Same, of course, goes with Coleman, which we've already discussed. Monterey Bay, we only played there
another one of the final concerts
5 weeks ago, and really got to know Amy Anderson and her team in Monterey Bay. And when I emailed her about this project, she wrote back immediately, enthusiastically. And I remember sort of saying to Milena, I can't believe all these organizations are so happy to do this. And lastly, of course, is Tuesday Musical in Akron, which, once again, especially for the Escher Quartet, although
I really feel like a family member of Tuesday Musical as well. Every time I go there, because, you know, the quartet life, you're, as a married couple, if you're in different quartets, you rarely see one another. And I visited Brook while he's been there at Tuesday Musical many times, and even some of the times they even let me join in and play with them.
Well, the Escher Quartet has been sort of quartet in residence for Tuesday Musical for the last 4 years. So we go to Akron 3-4 times a year and do education work in addition to main stage performances, and they have become family to the quartet. So I knew that if there was a very short list of organizations that we would approach for something like this, they were, of course, right there at the top. And I'll just sum up by saying that we're all just blown away by the generosity and enthusiasm of these organizations, and especially in this time when our livelihoods are at stake. For this so quickly to come together exceeded all of our expectations for what we could accomplish during this quarantine. So a big thank you to all of you.
Yeah, all of you.
Oh, thanks for that. It's been a sprint, for sure. We're all struggling with, how do we remain connected to our audiences, which cannot assemble? How do we keep the artists at the peak of their game when they can't perform in public? What does the future look like even when the quarantine lifts and people who are vulnerable are afraid to go out? And one of the reasons why we want to be doing so much of this at the Chamber Music Society of Detroit is that we know that the more accustomed our audience becomes to accessing some wonderful music in this way, the more likely we are to retain the relationships with them. If we end up, for example, Milena, we have the Dover Quartet coming in November, and we will almost certainly have some members of the audience who are afraid to come out, and we want to extend that experience to them in some way. And so, this is a challenging time. I have a brother who's a consultant with an IT firm, and he gave me some advice about a month ago. He said, fail early and often.
Oh, yeah. Hurry up and fail.
Yes, well, hopefully we won't fail tonight. I did invest in a much stronger computer than anything I've ever owned, and right now, as I pull in your RTMP feed, and stream you from Philadelphia and add my signal to it, and record it live, the CPU has never cracked 30%.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. You have a great computer.
That's good.
And I'm just going to add one thing, Steve. I don't think anything will happen, but we are in an urban neighborhood, and if you hear cars zoom by,
motorbikes,
hopefully it won't enter the speakers or the microphones, but we're doing our best to keep it as quiet and concert-like in this house as we can.
Well, it's funny. There's a thing in theater called the suspension of disbelief, and certainly experiencing music this way that is not as pure as gorgeous music played in a gorgeous concert hall requires a certain amount of that. But this music speaks, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're so committed to having the music actually be live, not pre-recorded, but live. And there are much greater technical challenges with that. But I know that artists feel the love from an audience when they perform. And while we can't exactly broadcast the analytics to you in real time, I'll tell you that in past concerts, hundreds of people have tuned into this. And so On the other side of your camera will be a loving audience, I promise you.
That's fantastic to hear.
We believe it.
We'll feel it.
I think it's also worth mentioning that this is called chamber music, and which originally refers to chambers like this. So, suspension of disbelief might be slightly necessary, but also perhaps unnecessary.
Yeah, and I guess one of the big advantages of listening to music like this is you can wear whatever you want. You don't have to turn off your cell phone, and you can have a meal and a drink while you're doing it. And that's a little weird in Seligman Performing Arts Center.
Yeah. Sounds pretty good to me, but I don't think that'll ever happen.
Well, I have no idea what our audience is doing
can't mute yourself
right now as they listen to this. But we are going to break away and remind people what's on the program, and let you guys pull yourselves together for a great performance. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Alrighty. Our pleasure, and Steve and all of your crew in Detroit, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making this happen.
Special shout out to Kurt for facilitating the tech side of things, helping with the tech side of things. Always very important to thank the sound guy in showbiz, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's a special guy. All right. Thanks so much. If you'll hold on and not say too much, I'm going to show the other two slides and say a little something about them, and then we'll ring off. All right? Here we go. And so, of course, we've been here with the members of QuaranTrio. In front of you here is the program they're playing tonight. 3 wonderful pieces written for the ensemble of a string trio: violin, viola, and cello. And again, we want to thank our co-presenters and supporting presenters for tonight's concert: the Chamber Music Society of Palm Beach, the Coleman Chamber Music Association, Chamber Music Monterey Bay, and Tuesday Musical of Akron, Ohio. And I will be back with you shortly as we open tonight's concert. Thank you very much. Good evening, and welcome to another installment of CameraMusic, a production of the Chamber Music Society of Detroit in partnership with presenters all around the country. We're incredibly excited tonight to be presenting a concert by an ensemble that did not exist when the COVID-19 crisis started. They're called QuaranTrio, and they are comprised of Brendan Speltz, violinist, Milena Pajaro-van de Stadt, and viola, and Brook Speltz, cello. They will tell you how they are related to each other, but the thing that's very cool is Brendan and Brook are both members of the Escher Quartet, and Milena is the violist of the Dover Quartet. They are in the same house in Philadelphia, and they will be coming to us live from that house in Philadelphia. Very excited to bring you this. We could not bring it to you at all without the partnership of some really wonderful other presenters. Co-presenting tonight are the Chamber Music Society of Palm Beach and the Coleman Chamber Music Society, or Chamber Music Association. And here to give a special word of welcome are Jane Levy and Arno Sussman of those organizations. Let's listen to what they have to say.
On behalf of the Coleman Chamber Music Association, founded in 1904 and therefore the oldest independent organization presenting chamber music in the country, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's QuaranTrio concert. As audience members, we've all enjoyed performances by the Escher String Quartet and the Dover String Quartet, starting in 2015. And we're scheduled for the Dover to come back next year in 2021. So We feel very connected to these people, these wonderful musicians. We enjoyed last year having Brook's father, David Speltz, join the quartet, Escher, for a wonderful performance of the Schubert G major quintet with both men playing cello. So I know you'll remember that with great pleasure, and you're going to enjoy tonight's concert by these friends of ours, part of the Coleman family. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to this very special live stream concert. My name is Arno Sussman and I'm the Artistic Director of the CameraMusic Society of Palm Beach. First, I'd like to say a big hello to all our supporters, board members, and our concertgoers back home in Florida. Together with our Executive Director Doug Evans and our Board Chair and Founder Vicki Kellogg, we hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and we're looking forward to the day when we will all get together again and enjoy this incredible art form that is chamber music in a live concert setting. In the meantime, we can all consider ourselves very lucky to be able to enjoy a special performance by the QuaranTrio straight from their living room to ours. We'd like to sincerely thank Willa Walker and Stephen Wogeman from the Chamber Music Society of Detroit for this wonderful initiative, and we're honored to be co-presenting this concert with you. Now let's enjoy some great music.
Thank you, Arno, and thank you, Jane. And now I want to thank our supporting presenters, Chamber Music Monterey Bay and Tuesday Musical of Akron, Ohio. Together, the five of us are ensuring that not only is this a wonderful concert, but also that the artists are compensated for their performance. And that's a really important thing at this time. And now we are very excited to go to the artist's living room in Philadelphia. Here we go. You know I'm the engineer for this at the same time. It's a little tricky.
Believe me, we can hear the applause from 1,000 miles away.
Welcome back. So sorry about the delay and the technical difficulties. They are working as hard as they can on them in Detroit. This is a monumental effort to bring this all together, and those efforts going down in Detroit right now are very much appreciated. Thank you, Steve, and your crew for redirecting the feed to YouTube. So I hope most of you are here, and welcome back. This is, by the way, the most visitors we've ever had in our house before. You heard the first 4 movements, I think, of the DOHNÁNYI, and I'm not sure when the feed was lost. So we will play the 5th movement and complete the piece, and then move on with the rest of the program. perhaps not the ending to the piece that we all expected. Well, I guess we expected that ending, but what happened before?
The timing between.
The timing
movements.
between. So welcome back once again to Philadelphia. My name is Brook Speltz, my brother Brendan Speltz, and my wonderful wife Milena Pajaro-van de Stadt, and we are the newly formed QuaranTrio here at our home in Center City, Philadelphia. You just heard DOHNÁNYI's Serenade for string trio, one of the great sort of romantic masterpieces for this type of ensemble. And we're now going to move on to something that was written very, very recently by our dear friend Chris Rogerson. Chris, I know you're probably watching right now, and Chris is actually only about 5 blocks south of us, also quarantined in Philadelphia, in South Philadelphia. And we want to just thank him from the bottom of our hearts for writing this piece you're about to hear, which I think once you do hear it, you'll agree it's incredibly soulful and incredibly beautiful. And we really do wish it was twice as long as it is. And maybe Chris will, we'll talk afterwards and you can add a little bit more. This piece, which is titled, it's a fun title. It's titled Brilena. And if you're a rocket scientist, you might, make the connection that that is a combination of my name and Milena's name. And Chris wrote this for our wedding, which was about 1.5 years ago, actually almost 2 years ago, in Idlewild, California. He wrote it originally for string quartet. Once the stay-at-home orders came through and we knew that the 3 of us would be in this home for quite some time, we immediately reached out to Chris and asked him to rearrange it for string trio, which is wonderful in so many ways. It's nice to play new music, and we also, of course, we wanted to hear the piece that was played at our wedding. Actually, I think we really wanted to play the piece that was played at our wedding. Before I go on, before we play more, I just want to say that if you're just joining us, welcome. There were some technical difficulties during the first piece of the DOHNÁNYI, and I hope that everyone now has found the new home for this live stream on, I believe, YouTube. But it doesn't matter. If you're watching, then you're watching. And hopefully the rest of the evening goes on without any more issues. And one more thing, just before we play, since I'm not sure all the graphics are there, this is an incredible collaboration to bring this concert to all of you tonight. The Chamber Music Society of Detroit, Coleman Chamber Music Association, and of course Chamber Music Society of Palm Beach, all generously co-presenting this performance with additional support from our dear friends at Chamber Music Monterey Bay and Tuesday Musical Association in Akron, Ohio. For us at this time to play on behalf of these organizations that we have all had the pleasure of working with in our normal jobs in string quartet land, the Dover Quartet and the Escher Quartet, to see everybody come together and pool their resources and make this happen. We're very honored, and it's a privilege. It's really a privilege. So I'll stop talking, and we're going to play Chris Rogerson's Brilena. That was Brilena by Chris Rogerson. Chris, who is only about 5 blocks south of us here in Philadelphia, wrote that for our wedding almost 2 years ago. And thank you, Chris, for that incredibly beautiful piece of music. Somehow, right now in this moment, it's never felt better to play it.
Chris, I have to say I'm enjoying that high register moment more and more as we keep playing it.
We were originally, at this point, going to take a 3-minute, 4-minute intermission, but I think we've had a long enough pause in the music making, so we're going to go right into our final piece, which is none other than Beethoven's masterpiece string trio, Opus 9, number 3 in C minor. And Beethoven wrote this, of course, being Opus 9 relatively early in his life, but I would say that both for musicians who get to perform it and historians and professors who have studied it, this is really a monumental work of Beethoven's. In particular, a sort of coming out party, identifying himself as really a genius and somebody to watch. Right at the beginning, you're going to hear in this key of C minor, the first 4 notes are eerily reminiscent or foreshadowing of his late string quartets. Already we were seeing the signs of what was to come. The second movement is one of the most beautiful slow movements written for this type of ensemble. It's one of the most beautiful slow movements in the string chamber music repertoire. So without further ado, in the final piece of our program, we give you Beethoven's String Trio in C minor, Opus 9, number 3. And we imagine applause out there. And we'll do a little chair
Have a little
bow.
chair bow.
So our faces aren't cut off.
Thank you so much for joining us and bearing with us through the small-ish technical challenge we had earlier.
That's right. And before we sign off, just one more time, we just want to express our sincerest gratitude to all the powers that be that brought us to all of you viewers out there. Of course, starting with Chamber Music Society of Detroit, who sort of came up with this whole idea and helped facilitate all the technical difficulties of putting something like this together. Thank you so much, Steve and Willa and the whole team at Detroit Chamber Music. Of course, co-presented by sort of our hometown series, Southern California Pasadena boys, Coleman Chamber Music Association. Incredible thanks and for your support. And last but certainly not least, Chamber Music Society of Palm Beach, who are dear friends of ours, both professionally and personally, and we thank you incredibly for your support. In addition to those three, we have also had support from two incredible organizations that we both are also familiar with. ChamberMusic Monterey Bay, Amy Anderson and Alcide and her team there, and of course Tuesday Musical Association of Akron, Ohio, which especially for Brendan and I, actually, and Milena too, who's
kind of a home away from home.
It's a bit of a, Akron is a home away from home, and so a special hello to everyone in Akron who's viewing this concert. I think we're going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, I'm Brook Speltz, Brendan Speltz, and Milena Pajaro-van de Stadt saying good night.